Alright, this is Justin, R&D IDI Performance. What we got here is a 7.3 IDI block, and this is actually going to be an engine that's going to go into my truck. It's going to be sleeved down to a 4.040 bore to utilize a rotating assembly that I had from a former 6.9 build that I did. So we're going to basically have a 7.3 block 6.9. What this episode is going to be a series. I'm going to document the entire build of the engine here from start to finish. But this episode here, we're just going to give you an introduction on this particular engine, this block, what it consists of, and then we're also going to show you how to convert to a cup style freeze plug, and then we'll go through the processes in other episodes, like the machine work, decking the block, boring it, honing, cylinder head work, and all that stuff. So this episode here, we're just going to explain what we got and install these freeze plugs to show you guys how you can install a cup style freeze plug to get rid of the disc style, which are good from the factory, but if you ever have to replace one, they can be a bit finicky, especially if you don't get the right material. So go from there. Okay, so basically what we have is this particular block is actually one of those Craigslist specials. We picked it up. It had some weird stuff going on with it. It had some truck stuff, but it also had some medium duty stuff. And this thing had a 40 thousandths inch overbore, which any of you guys familiar with the 7.3 IDIs know that that's just crazy. I'm surprised this block didn't have cavitation. We didn't pressure check it, so maybe it does have a pinhole. We don't know. It doesn't really matter. We sleeve all our engines, and this is going to be no different. Basically, other than that, you can see the factory style freeze plug is a disc type. It sits on that ledge inside there, and you actually peen it, and it wedges it into place. A lot of times with aftermarket plugs, you can have issues with them not having enough bite, and they will actually pop out on you, which, especially with these two back ones here at the bell housing, that's no fun. That means you have to drop the tranny, and needless to say, we have some stories about that. So this engine is going into Project Smoky, which any of you guys familiar with any of the R&D work or any of my work know that that's my 1988 F250, and currently it has a 7.3 in it. That's all right. There's, it's in good shape. When I did the studs on it, the cylinder bores were great, but we're having some issues with the prototype head gaskets, I believe, and if it's not the gaskets, it could very well be cavitation in its own right too, but we're not sure until we actually get it apart, and we're going to go ahead and get this engine done to drop in that 7.3's place. So we won't know till after, but basically what this is going to consist of is it's a 6.9 base 7.3, like I said previously. We're going to a 4.040 bore on it. It has 6.9 pistons, but we actually took turbo rods and bushed them down to the smaller pin size. We've never had an issue running the smaller pins on high boost applications. This engine here is actually going to see a 150 pump, maybe right around the 400 wheel horsepower range, all said and done. So it'll be a good test for NA pins, but I don't really see a worry with the pins. The rods are a weaker link than the pins are. So we'll just go ahead and run this. This rotating assembly I have that's going into this was out of a 6.9 that I did about 3 years ago, and ended up lifting the heads on. There just wasn't enough clamp load with studs and everything. So basically what we're doing is we're going to basically go back and readdress that 6.9, but we're going to do it with the 7.3 block this time. This is actually going to get 6.9 heads on it. We have a set of 6.9 heads that we broke down. They're in the hot tank right now, but we're going to go through all that and do nice performance valve job on it, and we'll document all that along the way when we get there. But for now, we're just going to show you how to convert to a cup style freeze plug. Now what we got here, and this is just your typical cup style freeze plug. We're using brass here, that way you have no issue with them wanting to rot out or anything. Now you could go with a stainless one, and that would be, you know, possibly be a little bit more stout, but it's a freeze plug. And unless, you know, a lot of guys, including myself on other builds, we've done screw-in freeze plugs, a lot like the high performance Fords of the 60s and whatnot, and that's, you know, if you're after every little bit of block strength, then that's maybe a route you want to go. Is it a complete necessity? The jury's still kind of out on that. So this build here, being that it's not a full out build, it's just going to be around the 400 wheel horse mark. We are actually just going to install these brass cup style freeze plugs and go from there. Now, this may seem a little shade tree, or however you want to appropriately title this, but we actually use a modified hole saw to basically cut the step out of the block. Now, you know, it is what it is. What we do is we actually trim the hole saw where the saw part of it, where they tend to stick out a little bit there on the diameter, and so we trim that down just to be able to pull it a little bit inside of 1.5 inches, which we didn't want to go over 1.5 inches, otherwise these freeze plugs will not go in properly. And I do have a reamer, but in our experimentation with it, the reamer really doesn't leave any better of a finish, and this hole saw actually leaves a pretty decent finish, a lot more decent than you'd expect out of a hole saw. So we're going to go ahead and go ahead and start off here drilling out the plugs, and we'll show you how that goes. Now, this is post quote-unquote machining, as you would call it, but if you can kind of tell, it's really not that bad of a surface finish. Plenty ideal for sealing a cup style freeze plug with a little bit of Loctite or thread locker. So what we'll do here is we'll finish up these other holes, and then we'll move on to the next part of the video. Okay, so now that those are all taken care of, that's the block heater hole. Now we can go ahead and install these freeze plugs, cup style. Some of you may be wondering, well, why are you installing the freeze plugs right now before any of the engine work is done? Usually you install the freeze plugs after it's painted as an end sort of thing after everything's cleaned out and all that. Realistically, I'm doing it like this specifically for video's sake. We went ahead and cut them, obviously, to show you on video, but I was just going to show you guys how to install these as well, just to give you an example. And it's really no different installing them now than later. I just don't get the fancy brass finish after it's painted. But anyway, we'll go ahead and show you how to do that. Okay, so what we have here is our driver. It's aluminum, it's softer than the brass, so you won't mar the brass up at all when you're installing the cup itself. We're also going to use some red thread locker on this, and what that's going to do is help hold the cup into place, and it's also going to seal any imperfections so you don't have any leaks at the cup itself. So I'll go ahead and show you how that's done. And you can kind of be liberal with it. If you get a little excess on your block, it's not going to hurt. You're going to want to install it so that the lip just barely goes past the edge. Right. So we'll go ahead and install these and then show you the finished product. Okay, so here we have the finished product. So you can tell the plugs are seated nicely. You want to run that lip all the way in to the very edge so they're flush with that edge, so that you can utilize every bit of sealing surface. So anyway, next time you see the block, we'll have it up on the surfacing machine for a bore, sleeve, and surface. Stay tuned. Oh, and I failed to mention the plugs I used. It's a Dorman part. Any 1.5" expansion plug will work. This is the part number I used, though it's available through any O'Reilly's auto parts. They can usually get it to you that day. So anyway, thanks.